don't want anyone to come away from today's webinar thinking that they've got all these extra actions to do. What the webinar is hopefully going to do is help you and signpost you to things that already exist, that you can really help your pupils with their careers when we're talking about the STEM sector. So it's planning effectively for STEM visitors as well. To introduce myself, I'm Grace Marson, Specialist Lead at SEERIH. If you look right at the bottom of the slide, that's our acronym expanded there. So we're a science and engineering education hub based at the University of Manchester. My background is former teacher, primary teacher, science subject lead for most of my primary teaching career. I spent 6 years also developing trainee teachers on a PGC course. So really now my role at SEERIH brings all that together. I now get the luxury of full-time focusing on primary STEM and also teacher development. So if you haven't heard of us before, and if you are a science lead, or if your science lead hasn't heard of us before, there's other ways we can support, which I'm not going to go into today. Because in this session, we're going to look at what opportunities are available to you and your schools to engage with STEM visitors, how we can maximise that visit. So it's not just a case of that STEM visitor turning up, giving that this is your life story, and then going away and that's that. How can we really maximise that impact? And showing you a range of quality resources that are in the sector that will help promote careers in STEM across your school. Feel free to pop questions into the chat as we go. I will stay on at the end as well for a little while until everyone's got it. If anyone's got extra questions, that is fine. So just to start with, what I want you to do is just look at those photos. Explorify is a free resource. It was probably, when I was teaching, one of my favourite go-to resources for teaching primary science. But they've got these things now on there to do with careers, profiling people. So this is one of those new ones. And what I want you to do is just look at the photos and just think, what did you deduce? What do you infer from that photo about Michael? And again, if you can pop into the chat, I'm also more than happy if anyone wants to unmute and we have that dialogue going, but just have a think and have a think what your class would say as well. So who is he? What does he do? And if anything does pop into the chat, Jane or Lucy, be really great. Let me just see if I can get the chat on my phone, but I'm struggling to see the chat whilst doing this. Oh.
Someone said it's likely to be involved in science research, focus on vaccines, discovered a vaccination, researcher into vaccines, scientists working on vaccines.
Yeah, brilliant. And as adults, you know, we know that. What I would ask you to think of now is, and I've done this many times when we had British Science Week in school or STEM Week, and we'd ask the children to draw a scientist. And I'm sure you can imagine, you know, if you were to ask children to draw a scientist, you're going to get a lab coat, aren't you? Normally male in most cases, normally an old person with crazy wacky hair, with potions in their hand. And hopefully by the end of tonight, you know, I know as adults, you know that not all scientists wear lab coats. Well, there's lots of resources we can show children. In this case, this scientist has got a lab coat because that's important as well. When we're not saying they don't, but that's just a lovely starter and Explorify and who is, and there's a resource that goes behind that. So this is really important that we get some engagement in the chat. Why do you invite visitors to school? So if we think about today's session, it's all about STEM visitors. Why invite them in the first place? What's the point of it? Or what are you hoping to get from inviting a visitor in? So if you could all put at least one thing in the chat, more if you've got it. And then again, Lucy, if you could just let me know what's popping through. You might have different reasons for this. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just why? Why invite them in?
So some of the reasons include to raise awareness of a particular field, give the children real life experience, information.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, real world experience. I've managed to get the chat on my phone now. Fantastic. Yeah, real life. And that's the big buzzword, isn't it, at the moment in the whole curriculum, actually, not just in science. Real life, let them see someone who's doing the job for real, not just talking about it. Children to meet different employers, yeah, learn about jobs, thanks, Jane, be inspired. And that is really important. I spent the majority of my teaching career working in areas of very high socio deprivation, children who parents didn't have the aspirations for the children, children didn't know what opportunities were available to them. So it's our job as teachers to promote that, isn't it? Show what is out there, what they could aspire to do. Right, the next one. Who would you like to visit your school? I think we'll skip that for a minute. We'll come back to that. So why? A lot of you said this. It's as if you read my next slide, isn't it? Real world context. So those of you, you may have seen EEF published their primary science guidance report very recently, and it talks in there, recommendation 4 out of the 6 recommendations is about relating learning to relevant real world contexts. And yeah, it's really interesting that a lot of you picked up on that. This is one of our publications. So Professor Bianchi, she's professor now, it says doctor on there, but she's the director of our hub and very involved in the science sector and publications as to improve primary science and engineering. And 10 key issues came out during COVID. And it's not a document that's meant to bash teachers and say these are 10 things that schools are doing wrong. It's 10 recommendations for you as your school to look and think, actually, we're doing number 1 really well. Oh, that could be an area of focus for us. But this is issue number 9. Children rarely seeing themselves, their families, or members of their community as scientists. So as I said before, if we ask them to draw a scientist, they're drawing someone who's lab-based, who they have no relation to. They believe it's for other people and it might not be for them. And just those messages, that's unconscious bias that's being reinforced about the stereotypes of scientists, disadvantaged children's needs not being met, and contexts. So again, it's going back to those real world contexts, isn't it? Okay, and then the other key piece of research, and then we'll move on, is the primary science capital teaching approach. So there's talk, isn't there? Cultural capital, the concept of science capital, really similar. And this is a project that's been going on a long time. It's University College London doing a big research project for many, many years about children's attitudes and aspirations regarding science. And what that research has shown, the key message for us as primary teachers, is children will form an opinion whether science is for them by the age of 11. So while they're with us in primary. And if we've not done our job well to show that it could be for them and all the varieties of science and the different jobs that use science, then the child might switch off from science before they've even gone to secondary school. It's a lovely read, it's a nice read, it's freely available online, and it's all about equity and social justice. So if that floats your boat, I would encourage you to take a look at that. It's not asking you to reinvent the wheel, it's asking you to make small tweaks to your lessons. Here's an example. We've got Malcolm, pupil, enjoys football. He likes to learn about his cars. His dad's a mechanic. He says he's not met anyone scientific and he doesn't feel that science is for him. So what the primary science capital teaching approach would encourage is for us as teachers to draw out the fact that in football there are scientists, there are physios, there are nutritionists, there are people that use science in their jobs. His dad is using science and engineering in his job. So the fact Malcolm says, I haven't met anyone scientific, you know, it's widening that perception of what a scientist is for Malcolm. And I love this diagram. If you think of capital as a backpack that we all carry around, we've all got different levels of capital. I would have said, as a primary school pupil myself, I had low science capital. It's quite ironic given what I do now. My parents weren't scientists. My parents didn't have anything sciencey in their job. I didn't get taken to science museums. I didn't have junior science kits at home. I had books, lots of books. I had fiction books. I didn't really have a lot of non-fiction books to do with science in my bedroom at home. Funnily enough, I went on to do an English degree, so maybe there's something in there. But if we think about the children in your class, in your school, what are their levels of science capital they're coming? Do they interact with a lot of people who work as scientists or have science in their job? It's always good to keep in your mind that one. So moving on, practical things here. So just pop in the chat if anyone has managed to have a STEM visitor to school and where they found them. Because these are my two main recommendations of where to get someone in a STEM field to come into your school. So STEM First are the STEM Ambassador Hub for our region. STEM Ambassadors is a national scheme where you as a teacher can request a visitor to your school. It's free of charge. You can be quite specific in your request. Once during Science Week, I had quite a boy-heavy class, and I just wanted a female scientist to come in, and that's what I requested. That's what I got. And it was quite interesting. This scientist that ended up coming to my class, very fashionable. I told the children that the scientist was coming in the afternoon. And when I brought her to the class in the afternoon, I had one little boy saying, I thought you said a scientist was coming, miss. I said, well, this is the scientist. And they just could not get over the fact that she was dressed in a lovely outfit, female as well, from an ethnic minority group. And so that really shattered that misconception and that bias that they had towards what they were expecting. So STEM Ambassadors, free to request. You just have to sign up. You can see there that blue button there. It's a case of registering on the website. Once you've registered and you've got an account, you can then request people to come on specific dates. I would just caveat that by saying you can imagine British Science Week, very tricky. You've got to get in there well in advance if you want anyone for British Science Week in March. And then use your community. So put a call out to parents, to local businesses. Those are the people the children will identify with. Again, we invited a hairdresser into school and she spoke about the science that she needs in her job, and that was a parent of a girl in the class. But put a call out, you will get all sorts of people, but as long as you're quite specific with the ask and you're not asking them to come and teach a lesson, you're asking them for maybe 20 minutes of their time, and that's always worked really well. So definitely STEM ambassadors through the hub there, and community as well. Now, this isn't a visitor as such, but it's worth mentioning because I really got a lot from this when I was still teaching. I was a year 6 teacher at the time. I don't know if you've heard of I'm a scientist, get me out of here, and I'm an engineer, get me out of here. But what these are online platforms where your children get the opportunity to live chat in a chat room with scientists and engineers. You get sent bios of those people before the chat so your children can read about them. You can prepare questions and then they go online. There's a moderator, so it's all, trust me, I've checked it out, it's all safeguarded really well. You as a teacher get a log on as well. And it's just lifetime interaction with scientists and engineers. They do different themes. So there might be a robotics engineer week, and you can go on then, or a healthcare week. So all the scientists are around that theme. And what they've got on their website is they've mapped it to the Gatsby benchmarks. You can see there, everything they do is mapped. So you know you are ticking lots of boxes there by engaging with that. And as I said, we did it in year 5 and we did it in year 6. I wouldn't recommend it lower down the school. And the children absolutely loved it and then wanted to learn more about different careers to do with STEM after that. So my dream guest would be David Attenborough. Yeah, every time he trends on Twitter, I just think, gosh, what's gone on with David Attenborough? Is he still around? But he's in his 90s now, isn't he? Late 90s. So he's my dream guest. So I want you all to imagine that I've lined up David Attenborough to come to your school next week. And I'll be there as well, by the way. Okay. What I want you to do in the chat is I want you to think of ways in which you would prepare your pupils for this visit. What would you do? What would you organise? Okay, give you a couple of minutes and then Lucia, if you mind. Oh no, I've got the chat on my phone. Let me have a look. And if you're not a fan of David, swap it out for someone who you would love to come in as a visitor. See some typing going. I'm just seeing Jane's typing. I love that. See me, be me. Yeah, we always talk here in SEERIH about if you can't see it, you can't be it. It's simple, isn't it? Okay, Emma, thank you very much. Yeah, do some lessons before he comes. Who is he? What does he do? Questions, yeah, prepare your questions for him. Jane, research, yeah, prepare questions, make a poster about the school. Yeah, so it's not just about David. Let's do that two-pronged approach where we're sharing things with him. Children to learn, yeah, prepare questions. Yeah, Jennifer, yeah, you're with me there. I have had a letter from him, so I would recommend if you want anything back from Sir David at the moment, when I taught year 3, we did a lot of work about him and his life and his job. We sent them off to him. You can find his address on Google, and he sent us a letter back thanking the year 3s, and they were, you can imagine, I think I was more excited though. Yep, so you've all got the idea. So what unfortunately happens with a lot of STEM visitors, because we do work here at SEERIH, one of our projects is pairing schools up. It's a funded project by the Royal Society, and we have to pair a school up with a STEM link. And what the feedback from that STEM visitor often is that they get to the school and they're not sure what their role is on the day. So we've done a lot of work with the teachers on that project and the STEM visitors to make sure that the visit is well prepared so that the visitor knows their role on the day and the teacher knows their role on the day, which sounds obvious, but sometimes STEM visitors turn up to school, are expected to just speak about their job, fill a slot and go. But yeah, it sounds like we've all got the right idea here. Planning activities, thanks Jane. Andrew, yeah, research and questions. Okay, so what we've got here now at SEERIH, and it's available, I'll give you the link on the Padlet, it's searchable as well on Google, is our STEM VIPs publication. And this is called Visitors in Primary Schools and How to Plan Effectively for a Visitor. Here on the right, you can see a question mountain. It's just based off Bloom's taxonomy, looking at different levels of questions. So you can see those lower level questions, what is, who was, right up to deeper levels, obviously taking into account the age of the pupils that your visitor is going to be working with. But it's really good, as you've all put in the chat, to get those questions prepped before the visit. It sounds obvious, doesn't it? But you'd be amazed at how many people don't. And that just makes for a smoother visit. If you know that your children have a bit of knowledge and they've got questions that they have developed and want to ask, it avoids a visitor turning up and a child asking them what's their favourite colour or when's the birthday or the favourite animal. It gets the STEM questions in. Okay, another way of preparing. So a bit of a shameless plug here, but it's free, so I'm not trying to sell anything. We have a big campaign called Great Science Share for Schools, and that's all about children developing their questioning and curiosity. And part of that now is question makers. So these are just 2 of a suite of 6 resources that we've designed up to promote children's question asking. And you can certainly use these with visitors. So there are wonder clouds and one on the right there. I'm sure many of you remember making these yourselves at primary school on the playground. It's a question fortune teller. Fold it up origami style, and the children then have question stems. So who is, why might, and that's just a really fun, engaging way of developing their questions from those lower level closed questions to higher order thinking questions. So definitely there's the website, Great Science Share. Again, it's free. If anyone wants more info about Great Science Share at another time, happy to help with that as well. And just if you want some cash for school, I'll put this out there because it might tempt some, and I'd love the cash to go to Greater Manchester schools. We've got a UK-wide application at the minute for £250 bursaries to join up with Great Science Share this year. So that opened last week. Okay, thanks, Jane. Yeah, and these resources, I will just say I am now paid to promote them and use them and talk about them. I used both of these while I was still teaching. I only left the classroom 4 years ago. I used especially the one on the right. The children loved it in science, but across the curriculum, to be honest. Then, as I mentioned, Royal Society project. This is off a portfolio of one of the teachers that we were working with a couple of years ago on our clean air project that we did with Royal Society. And that involved, as we said, real world context. No, Manchester, the clean air zone, all the rest of it at the time. And what we linked that school with was a climate change officer. They came into school and they did do the usual, speak about the job, that was important. But after that, a bit like what Jane was alluding to before, let's flip that visit. Let's not just have a visitor in to talk at the children. Let the children lead that session and talk to the STEM partner. So let the children do science while your visitor is coming. So a perfect format for me would be maybe 15 minutes intro about their job, but you've developed those questions beforehand, as we've just seen. And then have your usual science or maths, whatever lesson going on, and let that STEM partner go round the groups, chat to the children, relate it to their job, and let the children be the voice in that room and tell the visitor what they're doing in science, what they're learning, why are they doing it that way. There's nothing more empowering than that, and that is the model for Great Science Share. We have an event here every June at the university where children are talking to STEM visitors and other children, and they're the science explainers. And that's a lovely model. So that's exactly what happened here in this school. This is a school in New Moston. Let me find there. And again, the work. So this is, while that STEM visitor was in the room, the children were doing their evidence gathering and data analysis. And that STEM visitor was then able to go around and say, do you know what you're doing here, I do in my job, I collect data. The data I collect about clean air, you're doing something really similar. So if you can link a project, that would work really well. And then sometimes, I'm well aware, we can't always get an in-person, that is the ideal, isn't it? Get a person to come and visit and work with them in that sort of way. But I just wanted to show you as well other resources that exist that are there to promote STEM careers. So our other campaign is called Engineering Educates. For this year and next year, we're focusing on robotics engineering. And so we've produced these careers chats, and you can see here what we've tried to do is not just talk about their job, but make these people seem really relatable. So what are their hobbies? What advice do they have to the children? But also their characteristics. So we've worked with Northumbria Uni and New STEM. They do a lot of research into careers in STEM for primary. And what they have found, their big research paper, I wouldn't recommend reading it, it's a very, very lengthy thing, but basically the summary of that is tell children what characteristics a person has, because then the children might relate and think, do you know what, I'm creative too, and I never thought about that career for me. But if we were to say, what about being a reader in computer science? a child can't relate to it. Okay, but if we go in with hobbies, I think one of the robotics professors has got, they love creating things out of Lego, for example. A child can relate to that and think, do you know what? I'm good at that as well. I never thought about this career path. And similarly, we have them for Great Science Share, and we have videos as well for that. So you can see here, same format, all sorts of different careers on there, on both campaigns. Again, they're free. You just need to register and explore the website and see if there's anything there for you. One of my favourite ones from last year was a fashion lecturer here at the university. And that just really broke the myth that there's no science in fashion, that fashion's creative. Because what we were able to show there is science and creativity do go hand in hand. It's not one or the other. Kevin talks about how he loves his job because he gets to use his creative streak, but also he's being analytical as well with data. So that's, fantastic resource. And then wider sector resources. The Primary Science Teaching Trust have a website called A Scientist Just Like Me. And you can see here, I've snipped it there, top right. You can filter by job type, by gender, by ethnicity. You can even, there on the left, they're all disabilities. So when you click on that drop down, there's people who are tagged up by having autism or ADHD. And that's so important if you want a child to identify with someone who is similar to them and has gone on to do a specific job. And then what you get a downloadable PDF. It is like a slideshow, so you can put it on your screen in class or you can print it off. This is just 2 of the slides. It's a pack of about 10. But what you can see there, they've gone with the skills you need for that job. And the final slide there on the right is follow-up activities or links to other things that you can relate to that job as well. And as I said, we worked with New STEM, but they have their own website as well. They have a STEM Person of the Week, which is a fact card. Download. There's a massive bank of those now, as I'm sure you can imagine. And they have a curriculum careers tool there on the right, which is science and maths. And you can go on there and you can find an example there. I've got the geologist, but that's all mapped to the national curriculum topics for science and maths. So again, lovely, it's all free. I'm not recommending anything here that you have to go away and buy. But this one is their most recent one. And often when we think about careers, we're thinking about older children, aren't we? But we really urge you to start at the youngest children in your school. It's not just thinking about those children before they transition to high school. It's wherever you can drip feed links to real world, to real people, to careers. That would be my big top tip for today. Play BC is their early years careers resource for STEM. This has just won an education award. I think it might have been at the can't remember which teaching awards it, but they just won quite a big award because it's novel. There's not many careers resources out there specifically for early years, and this is specifically for early years in STEM. Now I could have snipped loads, but basically it's for your early years, and what they've mapped it to the early learning goals. They've mapped it to curriculum and they've shown you different activities there that are perfect in early year settings that the adults can set up and leave, but they're designed to be provocations to then think about careers. And there are role models within the resource as well. They profile people at a very appropriate level for early years children. So that is pretty fresh out the box, that one. That's quite new. And then how are we doing for time? Probably a bit early, but there's time for questions then. And then this one. So occasionally at SEERIH, we get funding to run specific activities. So you can see there, we've got Urenco, relatively local big employer. They're over the border in Cheshire. And they funded us to put on these masterclasses about sustainable science. We had 2 last week, so that's a picture from last week. We had groups of children coming into the university. They were working in our maker space on national curriculum aligned activities. They then had a tour of the university. So here you can see them working with Ian, who's a scientist in our high voltage lab. And Ian artificially produced lightning for them in that lab. We got them all behind the glass, don't worry. But fantastic, because then they've got to meet academics, they've got to meet people from industry, from Urenco that day. So we have got, and this is a sneak preview for anyone on the call, we have got another one, a final one in April. Not advertised this anywhere else yet, so I thought I'd just snip it here. If anyone on the call wants to come to that, this PowerPoint will be on your Padlet and the links are all on there. It's for year fives because we're looking at forces and we're linking the learning and the careers to forces and energy. And you bring 8 children along, there's no charge at all, and it's a full day there. But it's CPD for a teacher as well. So while those children are learning, the teacher is learning, and you're getting to put into practice your CPD there and then with a group of children. And that's the idea of a masterclass. We've got another one coming up in the summer on sustainable fashion with Kevin, who I mentioned before. So yeah, just know that there are opportunities to come onto university, meet academics, and again, raise that science capital. Children on the doorstep, and we need to get them to see what opportunities are there. So please do feel free to connect with us. There's our LinkedIn, mine and the Hub's. We are on Instagram, but only for Great Science Share. Our generic email address is there. And yeah, we're here to support you in all things primary science, engineering, DT, computing, whether you're a science lead or not. You know, we don't just work with science leads. A big part of our job is the primary science subject leader networks, which we run across Greater Manchester. But as you've seen, we have other opportunities, such as a masterclass and those 2 campaigns, Great Science Share now, we've got 700,000 children registered in 43 countries, and Engineering Educates, you know, that's a new campaign, but we're quite close to 100,000 children registered. So they're national, and in Great Science Share's case, that's an international campaign now. But we're there to support any teacher with their STEM teaching, really, is how I would sum up our work. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see people. And then if anyone does have any questions, please do either pop in the chat or let me know.
Should we stop the recording now for the resource? So we'll start with a thank you for Grace. That was great. And then if your camera is working, we come back to our classroom